Fifi Uncensored. I'm so happy you're here. I'm getting ready to interview Georgi Starz, who's the CEO and the owner of the girls' camp, Camp Nicolet for girls in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in Eagle River, Wisconsin, which is the precipice and the catalyst for my becoming much of who I've become. And I'm looking forward to interviewing her because I think she's going to have a lot to say about the empowerment of girls and showing up as you are and giving permission to be your perfect human self, just as you are. Hi.
Hey, hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. My God, hold on. This is, we're just going to fumble right through this. There we go.
Okay, good. Because I'm fumbling right along with you.
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else because I personally think that the mere fact that you, as you, Georgi, who has had the observation and the opportunity, Georgi, you are a woman who has been in my life since I was 11 years old. You are a camp owner and camp director of Girls Camp in Eagle River, Wisconsin, the Northwoods of Wisconsin, in the Nicolet National Forest, right?
Right.
And you've been in my life for decades now. And the reason why I invited you to be my first guest of this podcast of the Camp Fifi Uncensored is because you provided me and so many others, young women, a space for us to find ourselves, our true voice, to become fearless, to go through heartache. And I want to be able to talk about all those things and more. So welcome to my podcast as my guest, my very first guest. We're making more history here, Georgi.
I guess so, yeah, in a different way that we never would have dreamed of, even 10 years ago.
100%. And it's interesting because I just, as I shared with you, the teaser trailer that I dropped this morning, 5 years ago, I was going to do this. And then I went, oh no, we recorded my voice along with a friend and we were like, oh no, that's crazy. And then life happened. And then here we are, in these last 18 months, and the universe just kept saying, this is a thing to do. Right. So that's why I'm here doing this, because I do want to empower people, and I want to empower people with stories, and I want to empower women especially, but I want to empower with people who have had the ability to witness a lot of empowering. So you grew up with parents who started this girls' camp. So I'd love to hear your backstory about the philosophy of your parents and why they started the girls' camp and the legacy that you continue to carry.
Well, both my mom and dad, Ann and Wendell Schrader, were both educators. My dad was a coach and teacher, and my mom also taught. And during the summer months, this was, they were probably in their 30s at the time. They worked at other camps, and, they took the best of those camps, I guess, and wanted to start their own. And so they started to look around for property in the Northwoods, as you mentioned, the Northwoods of Wisconsin. And they looked at several properties, and they came across one, or they heard about one that was on Franklin Lake. And it was owned by a little old French lady named Shorty Fournier. And Shorty was operating a bass fishing camp for wealthy gentlemen from the Chicago area and bigger cities that would come in because they wanted to fish in the wilderness. And the cabins were, pretty well, the vertical log, tar paper kind of cabins. And so they approached Shorty, and she said, no, I'm not selling it. And she said, well, why do you want it anyway? Because she'd turned down several other offers for logging and other kinds of things like that. And my folks said that they wanted to start a camp for kids, specifically a girls' camp. And she said, well, okay, I'll sell it to you. And the reason being is that she'd hosted a group of Girl Scouts, and she caught them dumping garbage in the lake. And so she kicked them out. And on the way out, the scout leader turned around and said to her, well, this would never make a camp anyway. So she was just stubborn enough that triggered everything. And she said, okay. So they actually struck up an agreement, and if you can believe it, they bought 180 acres for a little over $20,000.
Incredible. I wondered because I never knew the acreage. So that's incredible.
Yeah. And but it was very run down, and the beach was all overgrown, but my folks saw the potential. And my dad was still coaching and teaching at the time. So he went back to Illinois, where he was had his position, and my mom stayed up here and kind of supervised workmen and whatever. And I found some correspondence not too long ago of her writing to him and saying, it's really hard for me to supervise these workers because I'm a woman. And so, but she did, because my mom was a feisty firecracker, right? Yeah. And she wasn't about to take no for an answer,
No.
And also the reason it's a girls' camp is because at that time, all the camps were boys' camps. Mm-hmm. And so they felt the market, that there was potential for girls, and they wanted to, make that opportunity available to girls. So they got to know other camp owners that had the boys' camps and got them to send a lot of the sisters to camp. So the first year that they opened camp, which was actually during the Second World War, very hard to get materials or anything like that, or food. But so a lot of the sisters came to camp, and that's how they started. The very first year of 1945 was the actual first summer. So interestingly enough, we're getting to like an anniversary because they purchased it in October of 1944. Yeah.
I mean, prolific.
Yeah. So that's how it all started, and kind of expanded from there. Yeah.
Such visionaries, really. Like, what a courageous, insightful legacy that your parents started and were able to see. And just those little nuggets, like with your mom having, reporting back. I mean, we all have these stories of these people aren't listening to me because they're a group of men, and we can all love our men as we all know we do. But to actually be heard, respected, and to be taken seriously, like our word means something, right, is so interesting because of what you all planted for so many of us women who in some cases are still 7, 8 years old today, and in some cases are in their 70s, 80s, or older, depending upon their interaction with the camp.
Right. Yeah.
Powerful.
And, the other thing too that I might mention is that the motto of Camp Nicolet is learning to live together. And the reason they chose that was because of the fact that it was started during the Second World War, right at the end. And that they felt that was a motto for the world, basically.
Georgie, the philosophy of learning to live together, I have to tell you, I don't even think I realized the impact unconsciously as an 11-year-old child and 11, 12-year-old girl that had the pleasure of going. I believe it was when my parents could no longer afford to send us to Camp Nicolet. And I made this secret promise to myself that you may or may not remember me sharing with you, but I made a secret wish to myself, when they can pay me to go back to camp, I'll return. And of course, as the American Camp Association, because those were my richest days, I'm going to tell you. You can't put a dollar amount to those days. And when people go, $750, you were the richest. Yeah, my soul sings with that. It's not about a dollar sign. It's a very great life lesson. But my point is that when I came back as a camp counselor, when you welcomed me back, how that has carried me forward as a woman in business and in life, and what I do in the entertainment industry, really foundationally is all about that, because I get to observe people who, whether they were taught that theory or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, it's interesting to compare that with today's work ethics and values. whatever, obviously there's nothing is so constant as change. And, things are changing. Everybody has to adjust, I guess, accordingly in order to make the best of it.
Yeah, and
The
I
last
think
2
that,
years have been a real challenge.
well, and I was just going to say the last 2 years reminded me of when you were reflecting on when your parents started camp. No, this isn't
Mhm.
World War II, but this has been a
Seems like
worldwide
it
pandemic.
sometimes.
Right, exactly. And that was my point, is that there's a lot of correlations of what's available, what's not, the climate of, people's mindsets, and what are we standing up for, and what do we believe in, and how are we going to get through it from point A to point Z, and how are we going to do this harmoniously and in the most kind manner, and really hear each other, and really like connect and co-create and move forward for the better of all good.
Right.
Which is also, again, reason why this format is so important to me, and why you being here is so important to me, because conceptually I know exactly in my heart that that is what your family took a stand for, not even realizing the cause and effect, the rings in the water effect, the rock in the water effect, that it would continue to have a very, very long-standing positive effect on so many, carrying forth that consciousness.
Right. Definitely a ripple effect, no doubt.
Well, speaking of ripple effects, as a woman who was born into this family, did you see yourself growing up around this camp as this was going to be your future?
It's interesting. I think when I was younger, and I started camp when I was 6, turning 7, I didn't know anything else. And, as I got older and went to college, I did decide that I wanted to do something completely different. In my entire lifetime, even today, I've only been away from camp in the summer 2 years, 2 summers. And so I think, I was at the 18-year-old age of wanting to do something different, strike out. So I did actually major in medical illustration and biophotography at Ohio State University, at the Ohio State University. And, I really loved it. Obviously there came a point when life again, interfered or got in the way or changed course. And I ended up back at camp. And now I really apply those things that I did learn more to graphic design and photography and media, and things like that. So it, was never wasted.
Well, I can tell you, as again, I believe but I wouldn't think anybody would know other than the two of us, aside from the immediate people who know us, that when I landed at camp, those seeds had already been planted inside of me about becoming a medical illustrator. So at 11 years old, my intention was to be that, and then to have met you and connected with you, somebody who I know for all doesn't expect me to say I'm a wallflower, but I am a wallflower that periodically has enough courage to come out of my shell. But you, as a woman and as an adult, had that direct influence on me. And nobody otherwise did I know who had gone into that field, as well as you were the woman who taught me photography. And those things, I mean, talk about like your influence and impact on my life could just, as we both know, could make me cry. And that's not difficult. That's pretty notorious.
Please don't.
Oh, I'm not going to, I promise you. Good. No, but I thank you for that, because, again, it goes back to foundation. Whether you use those tools or not, it's how it foundationally has carried you forward. And like you said, has been able to apply to all these different other things in life, which I think are very true. It's how you repurpose your toolkit.
Right. Yeah. And it is interesting how certain things do influence you to do what you go on to do. And I think for many years, I always identified myself with what I could accomplish. And I think over time that, when you get to be the age that I am at now, you realize that nobody's going to, in the long term, remember your accomplishments, but they'll remember you like if you were a kind person and if you help them and, if you help them be the best that they could be. And I think that might be a later question that you have for me, but I think that's my goal in life now, and to do it in whatever venue I have to do it in.
Well, I think that that's a perfect segue, because going from do you see yourself doing this to now that you've been doing this all these years, which collectively at this point, you've been a part of running this camp for how many years now, effectively?
Effectively? Well, let's see, I actually came back to start working when I was 23, and I'll be 75 next summer. So
amazing. So now now me doing the math right now is 75, 23. So for 52 years, is that what we're talking?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And so you had just come back before I attended. You had come back within the decade before.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, being a visionary yourself, did you see yourself being at camp all these years and committing to it and carrying on your legacy, your family's legacy?
I think at some point, yes, because my parents obviously were getting older. They both lived to be 94. At that point, they were still mentally extremely sharp. They advised, myself as well as my two boys, as to what they foresaw. And I felt obligated, I think, for sure, to continue on with what they had worked so hard to build. And then on the other hand, I had two sons that, the possibility of having them have this as their legacy meant that I see myself as more of a conduit, I guess, to keep things going as successfully as possible until they would be ready to take over. Unfortunately, Christopher is no longer with us. As of 22, he was killed, and therefore Jeremy has decided that this is what he does want to do, even though he also had other interests too, in media and broadcasting and things like that. But he's also applying that because he's doing podcasts at camp, and volunteering at our local radio station too.
Which is amazing. And I love that I got to see your two boys come into the world and follow in my sister and my footsteps to the boarding school that we all attended, Wayland Academy in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. So unconsciously, I love that, whether we did or we didn't have any influence on that, and I won't egotistically take that credit. I would love to think that there was some knowledge in the back of your mind that you just knew about it, and it was the way you wanted to lead the boys for the sake of just providing them the best of the best. No different than any parent who sends their daughters to your camp. That's the thing that resonates with me. I'm sure amongst all the community of camp owners, there's always this, one camp is feeling sowing their oats one year better than the other, what have you. Right. But at the end of the day, what always resonates with me regarding your camp is that you've always been tried and true in regards to, you've never veered off your philosophy. You've never veered off of what you set your intentions for the girls that attended your camp, or anybody that you surrounded those girls with, that they had to come with their best foot forward, with their intention to raise up women, young girls, to become the best women they could become in the world going forward.
Right. And, I think our leadership program has really come a long way. It's always been good, but I think it's, more intentional, I guess, in this day and age for that very purpose. And some of our best staff are young women who have gone through the leadership program starting from 9th grade on. And I have to say, this summer, they pretty much saved us because they were the strong staff. And it was really nice to see. That was a
You know,
really,
Georgie, speaking of leadership, I think that that is such a big word these days that we hear a lot.
mhm.
And, you know, I do believe that your camp does provide that, even though I haven't been in attendance or have been around it in the more recent years. But I definitely believe that that is something that I applaud you all for, is that you really truly do provide a space to really truly give young women the opportunity to become truly leaders. Doesn't mean that it's like set in stone. It means you're giving them the sense of confidence. They
Mhm.
have a space to find their confidence in their voice and
Yeah,
become
it's a safe
fearless.
space. Yeah, it's definitely a safe space. And I think the other avenue of doing that too is that Jeremy and Christopher started North Point Adventures. Actually, Jeremy started that. Chris started North Point in general. And so it gives kids from the time that they're like 12 on up a chance to go out into the wilderness with a trusted guide, a trusted trip leader, and really accomplish things and feel good about themselves. And many of them that have gone on Isle Royale backpacking for a whole week, and or Rocky Mountain National Park, those kids, they write their college essays on things like that. And it's gotten them into college, so I guess it's pretty good.
Well, it goes back to the nature part, giving you the tools to know that you can survive and thrive.
Hmm.
And I have to say again, even though I had attended other shorter term camps before I arrived at Nicolet, Nicolet really showed that for me, and especially when I became the counselor. But in between the camper and the counselor stage, the interesting thing was I did start to do many, the word expedition is not the word I really want to use, outings, but where it was like going to the Appalachians at
Right.
14, literally the same week my parents were getting divorced, like
Yep.
officially divorced,
Hmm.
going on something that they didn't even know who I was with. I was with a bunch of young kids, but I have to tell you that it was seriously camp that gave me as many fears as I had inside of me, which is ironic because so many people think I'm so confident. But I really, like every human being, I have things that I'm scared of. And to be that young girl who today carries all of that stuff forward with me, but because I believe, due to Nicolet let me know, as I know it's let many other women know, that they can put their hands in the dirt and they can find a bunch of rocks and they can create their own fire pit and they
Hmm.
can find the wood and strike the match and make a one pot meal. And all that together has created all the survival tools. Now, yeah, sure, you need a pot and you need the food and you need the whatever and you need a
You need the
match or you need the two woods, two sticks. But the point is, it's a life philosophy of what you're capable of from
Yeah.
nothing.
Even from the standpoint, and it's not as wilderness related, but we've had alums starting to come back for family camp, and they've been bringing their families with them for the last 2 years, and or reunions too, every 5 years when we have a major reunion at camp. And to me, because of being so uh, identifying with water skiing, I guess, so much, and water sports in general, to see like 50-year-old alums get out there and step off and go barefooting still, and just be grinning from ear to ear, and just feeling that confidence that, yes, I can do this. And I learned this here, but I'm still remembering how to do it, and then apply it. When you go home and you apply it to other things, well, if I did that, I can sure do something else or get through something else.
It's
Just,
absolutely true.
yeah.
Seriously, I could never have moved from Rockford, Illinois to Chicago or Chicago to Los Angeles and gone through all the things I've gone through, health wise and human wise,
Mhm.
if it weren't again for these tools. And again, why I'm so passionate about you being here, because I think that I cannot sing your praises enough for all you have. Listen, I mean, seriously, I'm so glad that that cracks a smile on your face because first off, cracking a smile on your face means the world to me. Making you laugh always made the world to me. Singing side by side with you, which I wish I still could do, but now with a paralyzed vocal cord, that's not happening. So
I don't smell that well anymore either, so it's okay. Not sure I ever really did, but
I was spoon fed that stuff. But you know, the fact that giving a safe space like that's everything. And I think that the empathy we as a world need to provide for each other, a safe space, is exactly why I think Nicolet still exists. I mean, look at financially, you have things to deal with, not, enrollment, you have to deal, like, there's all the, like you said, the change is constant.
Mhm.
But what I believe again is the constant thread is that you have provided this very safe space to help people evolve in. And I can just say from knowing what I was like as a kid to who I became as a counselor and the years of what had happened in those 6 years of my life, between those, and what gave me the tools to come and become the counselor I was between the ages of 18 and 23 really was like, it again has carried me forward. And this is not about me so much as why I feel it's so important to share so much of this, because giving a safe space for people to show up one year and they're in this frame of mind, and the next year maybe life in the last 12 months has completely shifted, but they still have a safe space to show up and find themselves and feel safe and readjust and recalibrate and get love and get support and get raised up, and then go back out into the world, and maybe they have to face a thing like the divorced parents or the death, or they became diabetic that year, or they got held back in school, but they know that they have a little bit more confidence to go out and try again and get back up again and get up again. This is all life is, and camp provided those foundations, whether we're conscious of it or not. What do
Yeah.
you think on that?
I think you're exactly right. And I think after this past year, especially, that this has made a huge difference. I'm glad that we were able to open once again, because we weren't in 2020, due to basically feeling that we didn't have adequate workforce to be able to deliver on what we were promising parents as far as keeping their kids safe. And nobody knew what was going on as far as the virus and how horrible it could be, or how it was going to be transmitted. I mean, we had everything in place. And luckily this year we already still had the $8,000 worth of PPE equipment. But we tested over 250 times during the course of the summer. Workforce was a challenge because visas didn't come through for many of our staff that were coming from especially the European countries. Right. And but people, for the most part, really stepped up, and we had alums that came back and helped out too. So I think that those kind of challenges, pulling together and hopefully working as a team, at least with the small team that we had, we were able to pull it off. Plus, we did see a lot more fragility with mental and emotional health for both campers and staff coming, out of quarantines and no school and, just no socialization. So I think that camps in general really provide that opportunity for people, young people, old people, everybody, to get back into it. Fingers crossed that this year will be better. We're planning to go full force next year, just back to a normal sessions and actually offering some really new, exciting programs too.
Amazing. I want to hear all about that, whether you are ready to discuss that. And I'm curious because being in the entertainment industry, we've been so rigid and so fortunate to be protected in a way that, we too are tested so much. And we really, I mean, I don't know if it's being in California or what, but we've really been mandated to follow certain things and really act accordingly. It's challenging to watch the world going up against all of that when you think, well, isn't this about humanity? Isn't this about your neighborly kind of belief system? And this kind of goes back to the theories of earlier, what we were talking about, the learning to live together. Look,
Mhm.
you and I may have different religions, different political backgrounds or beliefs, or socioeconomics or whatever, but at the end of the day, isn't life, you know, in living in, in a harmonious way, like in a healthy, joyful way, like the ultimate goal?
I think so. I think that is exactly the ultimate goal. I did bring a little show and tell. I wanted to
Oh,
show you.
please.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but it's upside
Yes.
down.
Oh, is this your mask?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
all the
that's
kids and all the staff got these. And
amazing.
yeah, so as soon as they got checked in this summer, we gave them a rapid test, and they did have to have a PCR test before coming. So again, that was a whole new ball game as far as, program design and things like that. We went back to a full 6-week session, and that was it. No people coming in, no visitation of any kind. And we were very, very grateful that we had, a full camp as a result. People went along with it, and, were really good about adhering to things. And so as a result, everybody was safe. All the testing we did all proved to be negative, and we got through the summer, which both Jeremy and I are extremely grateful for that.
Well, you need to be applauded for that, because that, going back to leadership, it really was how you set the tone, how you took ownership of that. And that is not an easy position to take, because you've got to have a force of willingness, as we both know, to lead and to accept the terms and to follow along with the terms.
I feel, yeah,
And
our families were very good about doing that. The kids were very good about doing that. Staff, you had to work with them. No doubt about that.
I wondered how their nights off would be.
Well,
Were they
actually,
allowed off campus?
well, what we did is we actually rented a condo for the whole summer, and then transported, people up there. However, with the workforce shortage all of a sudden and the visas not coming through, we had to kind of resort to commuters. And once we did that, we were allowing, even though they had been tested and they were vaccinated at the time, and the whole staff was vaccinated, we had to loosen up a bit, and I think all's well that ends well. But we were fingers crossed that we were going to get through with everything okay.
Really, really fortunate. So you, as a businesswoman, entrepreneur, and witnessing this, not only how it affected you because of the world, because of visas and the European staff and staff that
Right.
because it is a diverse group that you do bring together, because
Right.
diversity is a big thing with you all.
Yes.
Seeing that and seeing the positions people took, without getting into a political point of view, what was your, high and low and frustration, or do you want to share your opinion about
Well,
the
I
state of
think,
affairs?
sure. I think the highs were definitely the fact that the staff that we did have. And I have to say, our kitchen staff were absolutely phenomenal. They were able to get their visas from Mexico and Central America. They all volunteered to go into a cabin and be a second adult in that cabin when we couldn't get the other visas. And they were great. And it was so nice to see such a great group of young women that were so willing to make things successful. And then again, having some alumna come back and either volunteer or come, a few days a week to help out. And so as a result of people pulling together, yeah, it worked.
Well,
The lows were the fact that, obviously that the state of the world wasn't all that great.
yeah.
And locally, touch and go. We have a lot of tourists up here, so we had to be very, very careful. And I tried to set, a good example as far as what I did, whether it be outside of camp, go to the office here in town, and that would be about it.
Mhm. I think that states that is a major statement too, is, the old adage of, do as I do
Right.
mentality. Like, if you have an expectation of others, you must act accordingly. I think that that in the world has been certainly something, we don't even have to have volume. We can just observe a photograph or an
Mhm,
image in motion
mhm.
and not even have an exchange of words and have a sense of what's happening in the moment. And I think that thank God that you did have the success you did, because all it takes, sadly, as we both know, is one.
Right.
And in an environment like that, that is so insulated, one is a domino effect.
Mhm.
And reputation is on the line and life is on the line. And the
Right.
fact that you did that all so successfully with such, leading with your heart and your mind and your logic, again, to me, says so much about who you and your family has always been. And, you know, I want to thank you for that, for representing that, because I know, having been integrated with you the year before, when the decisions were being made day by day, moment by
Right.
moment,
They're
whether you
changing.
were or weren't opening, there were so many of us who were so concerned for you. And we can all be friends, or we can all be business interactive. That doesn't mean we know what each other's bank account is, or what you
No,
can and
right.
cannot do. And you know I mean, I think that that was a concern of how I
Definitely.
might not even be employed, but I still want to make sure camp stays
Right.
open or can float. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, right.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into the fact of that our alumna were also the people that helped us through this. In that we gave out over $128,000 of camperships this past summer to families that had been affected by COVID in some way, shape, or form, and financially just could not have afforded to come to camp. And because of the family's belief in us and also the alums' belief in us that we could make this happen and they wanted to help, we had the funds available to make it happen. And, we both, Jeremy and I, are so grateful for that.
Well, I think we have an extraordinary alum. I never feel like I'm doing enough. And I'm hoping that even this podcast can go out into the world and be shared in a manner that supports that and has its own ripple effect for it to support exactly who and what you represent, and what yours and Jeremy's, beliefs are, and why you're so passionate about not only carrying out this legacy, but how you one-on-one affect every child and every child's family, and going forward in that. And I think these last 2 years, we're all, even if you don't see it, are standing up and applauding you, because it took a lot of courage.
Well,
And I'm sure it was scary at times, and I'm sure you held your breath a lot.
yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate your support and affirmation, and everybody's that has given us great messages and whatever. And yeah, it was a very, very hard decision 2 summers ago. I mean, it was like unprecedented. I mean, that's a word that was so overused anyway. But the moment, I guess, that both Jeremy and I came to the conclusion that we can't do this. We got to come up with something else that's safe, but we can't do traditional camp. And what does that mean? That means no income for a whole year, and other than, having 4 weeks of family camp, which really, it's great to have people here that enjoy it, and, but that's not the same.
Yeah,
So
economically, right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was nice to be able to see people having fun and appreciating the environment, and that, I guess, was heartwarming in itself, and saved the year for us, as far as just emotionally, more than anything.
Good. In regards to, what you have observed over the years, watching girls in some cases show up at 7 years of age, sometimes they show up at 11, some show up for 1 year, others stay for 10.
Right.
What or more.
Yeah.
uh what is your observation like? What makes your heart sing about that? Or what have you observed, that if you were to write a bit on that, what would you have to say on that?
As far as the length of time,
As far as like, how has it inspired you? How has it tied into your purpose and your passion, watching young women flower, so to speak,
right.
bloom?
I think, it's sort of a residual effect in that you don't hear about the successes or the appreciation as much really until people, get to be older, and then they write to you, or, they drop in at the spur of the moment. And there were people at the last reunion, which had been our 75th reunion in 2019, that came up to me the final night during the burning end and all that, and said things that I absolutely blew me out of the water, like, about how much they appreciate or how much they learned, or, things similar to what you're saying, actually. And, that I never would have known that, because when you're little, you don't know how to express that in many cases.
And it's perspective, don't you think?
Oh yeah, yeah. Or, life events and what, like you said, things that helped you get through other things, challenges. And yeah, I think as the mind matures and you look back at things, you understand it a lot better. Just like the
Yeah, I
things your
think,
mother told you, you understand now.
oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that is it. And I do think it takes living life to, and going through things, and again having to, some people live a very blissful, uneventful life, and everything is a sweet, it's like apples and honey, it's sweet.
Mhm.
And some people have more challenges come up, and
Right.
and it's interesting because camp, as I knew it when I was a little girl, it was a pretty, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of affluence there, a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
a lot of affluence. I know my family was one of the least affluent of the girls in attendance at the time. And I don't know how that's shifted, and how that's affected who comes or doesn't come. Certainly I know there's a lot of affluence, but I'd like to think that based upon the scholarships you talked about, just for COVID or related, but in general, I know that I believe that you've tried to make it more accessible. It's a combo plate, probably, right? How has
Right.
that worked for you?
Well, years ago, private camps wanted to be known as exclusive.
Mm.
And now I think, certainly we are trying to be more inclusive, for everything. Either, in all ways, really, with kids, with staff, and so that no one's left behind, basically. That's, I know, a cliche, but
No, but it's
but it's
brilliant.
true. It is true. And I think that, and again, years ago, my parents were of the mindset that they didn't want to accept charity. They very bluntly said that when we brought up, oh, maybe we should do a foundation or something like that. They were no, everything that we give to people is out of pocket. We don't want to be a charity. So when they both passed in 2001, the first thing that Chris, Jeremy, and myself did was we formed an advisory board, and we tried to choose people from different vocations or professions and whatever. And one of our alums actually was an attorney, or is an attorney, and he was able to help us get the foundation going. So the Camp Nicolet Foundation is now designated as a charity foundation that will accept, it's a 501c3, so we can accept donations. And then these donations go specifically for camperships for kids.
That's genius. And so do you have a as per need basis, or you have a percentage that you like to apply annually? I know this has been a different time the last 2 years. Is that something that you carved out in a certain way, or it's organic?
Yeah, I think it's organic, and it's, as needed. We have an application for families, and sometimes we can't fulfill their entire request, but we do it based on what the funding is in the foundation. And, we do an annual fund drive every year, and with the hope that we will get enough to be able to support, the kids that really do want to come to camp. We do have a couple of our alums that actually sponsor a camper, and pay the tuition for the child. And it's worked out quite well. In fact, I would encourage that. Actually.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, and for somebody listening, when somebody does that, what is the tuition for a child to attend summer camp?
Well, this coming summer, for the 3-week period of time, that will be like session 1 or session 2, it would be $4,500, and that's all inclusive.
Great. So $4,500 for 3 weeks, or if they attended all 6 weeks, do they get to attend all 6 weeks, or is it split up
Yes,
into
they
2
can.
sessions?
You can choose to do that, and it's a little less than 9,000.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so now because of getting the word out and sharing to, what is the maximum amount of campers that you do accept per session or overall session?
Basically 90 to 100. 90 is a good number for us based on our program, because we like to still be very, personal oriented as far as, our staff ratio, camper ratio is still 1 to 3. So, yeah, so, we like to keep the numbers a little bit smaller. And I know based on numbers, especially in Eastern camps that have 200-300 kids,
Yeah.
this is more, we're family oriented. We're a family, and we like to keep
I'm
it that way.
grateful.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that intimacy. I think, again, that intimacy was, again, implemented at camp. I mean, I think my family was intimate, but I think that that was reiterated in the environment that you provided. And I think it's really important. I mean, it's even how I chose my schools. I didn't want to be, don't get me wrong, have great respect for Ohio State.
No, but okay.
And I'm not, no, this isn't combative. I'm saying numbers wise,
You're right.
I love large campuses. For me, that's, whether it was University of Wisconsin, Madison, or Illinois or whatever, I personally think I was better in a smaller, intimate environment.
Right.
And I do think that people do need that. I think that they need that to grow and to develop and to get the attention that they may or may not get in any other aspect of their life.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to feel that they belong to something greater than themselves. At least I feel that way. And I think even in a school, like I know when I first chose Ohio State, coming from a private boarding school that was smaller, obviously, they were like, well, yeah, how are you going to do someplace like that? But you find your niche. You find, like the medical illustration department only took 5 kids a year. So it was very intimate. And, if you belong to a sorority or a club or whatever, you have your own group that's a smaller group within the bigger group.
Yeah, they'll find your tribe.
I'm still proud of Ohio State.
As you should be. And I mean,
yeah.
we should note that I believe this would have been true when you went. I know when I was applying for medical illustration programs, there was only 7 programs in the whole United States to be accepted. So I remember that was a big deal to be accepted in a program.
Yeah.
And so that just shows, how talented and smart and committed. So I love that. That says a lot about you. From a perspective of, I remember as a child at camp, obviously we didn't have phones. We had phones, we had rotary phones, but you guys were the only ones who had access to the rotary phone. So we couldn't call our parents, so it was all about writing letters. Right. And I'll never forget actually being brought into the lodge, because it was during the period of Richard Nixon and Watergate. And being brought in, that was a very moment in history when he was, stepping down. And my point that I'm leading to is about social media and how much this has changed our world and environment, and what the kids have access to, and how you are sharing the moments that are happening, whether moment by moment, and how has your approach shifted because of all of this shift? Has it been help, or has it been a hindrance, or has it been a combo play for you?
I think it's a combination. I think there's some pros and cons to it. First of all, we are completely tech-free at camp as far as the kids go. Staff are allowed to use their phones, only under, not with the kids, but in times when, they're not exposed to the kids in the staff room or whatever. Internet's horrible. Therefore, that's why we have a town office. But I have to say, being really the person that takes a good share of the photos, we post thousands of photos throughout the summer. And, you know, you have to do it very intentionally too. I not only take photos and videos, you know, for promotional purposes, but also just to share with parents. And I think, you know, we let people know that right off the bat, that we're not there every single day to post things, like maybe 3 times a week. And just because you see your child, you know, walking 2 feet behind somebody else in a photo doesn't mean they're being left out. So you have to be very careful about those kinds of things and the interpretation.
Oh, I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine like there's got to be layers to that conversation alone.
Oh yeah.
Especially with the way people and you know, parents at this point have got to be ranging anywhere from their 20s on up. And those generations of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and 40-year-olds, they've all been raised on this technology. So as well as their children from the moment they come out of the womb. And that's got to be quite it's either got to be a gift or got to be a real, like, no, this is how it's going to be.
Well, I think parents and campers going into camp know ahead of time. So they've chosen that. And it's interesting, when Jeremy's done some promotional footage for various things, one of the questions or one of the points that the kids actually bring up is how relieved they are that they're not under that kind of pressure, and how they do like it. So maybe it's a shock for the first couple days, but hey, they start talking to each other like in person, and they sing songs, you know, like when they're going out on a cookout. It's the funniest thing when I have a great video of little Fawn, which would be, you know, 7 and 8 year old, walking up to horseback riding, just singing away. And they were singing, you know, like so many bottles of beer on the wall. And I was like, wait, guys, can you maybe just change the words to like pop or something like that while I take this video? And they thought that was a hoot. They, you know, they didn't see anything wrong with that.
Love it. I mean, my goodness, you know, I've got a couple of threads with my cabin, my girls still. And there's always these points of references, and you couldn't find a more diverse group of women doing so many different things all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, different levels of accomplishment, different levels of, you know, where they are in their life, whether they have kids, they don't have kids, careers, not careers, mothers, what have you. And but there's that beautiful common thread of walking down the path and singing a song and being together and laughing your ass off. And
basically.
you know.
So one of my great memories of you, though, has to be like for Jeremy's birthday party when he was like about 4 years old, and you came in dressed as Winnie the Pooh with balloons and the whole 9 yards. And it was awesome. It was, in fact, I'm sure I have snapshots someplace of that.
Wow. I'm so grateful that I left positive memories.
No, truly. And I remember also like painting, like must have been there like before camp, probably at some point, helping us get things ready. And I remember painting the dining hall. We put a new addition on the dining hall because camp was bigger. And I remember you there with your paintbrush, just painting away. And, you know, yeah. So all those things.
Listen, I would, if you knew how many summers I just wanted to drop everything and head over to Eagle River and just escape into the woods and the girls' camp and not worry about, you know, making my insurance hours or paying the mortgage and, or just knowing that the mortgage was paid and just doing, you know, doing life with giving back, paying forward, I think is so important. And I believe that, again, the reason why I decided to do this was because your environment gave me the opportunity during those years when I was showing up as Winnie the Pooh for Jeremy's 4-year-old birthday party, or painting, you know, the new addition to the dining hall, was because you made me feel safe. You and Jeff and your parents made me feel safe. And it was so freeing for me to be there at a time that I felt, as you know, my parents had become divorced, as I said, when I was doing the Appalachian Trail in Georgia when I was 14, my freshman year of high school. And within 5 months' time, our family businesses had gone down because of the recession, and our father died of a heart attack 5 months window to window, and died on 9/11 of 76.
Wow.
Now, that was a lot for anybody, one incident, let alone collectively all those things.
Right.
And from there, I went from that really accomplished young girl to what's the point? What's the point? I didn't realize unconsciously that I had said, what's the point? But I realized unconsciously that in a flip of a switch, everything can change in a heartbeat, no pun intended. And I went from being the president of my class of over 750 kids to just kind of like starting to smoke pot and, no longer was like having a purpose. And it wasn't really until, and yes, Waylon, thank God, saved my life going to boarding school at that point. Thank God my mother had enough still within her, God knows how, I have no idea, because she was left with no life insurance. She was making $8,000 a year as a public school teacher. She was raising 3 kids as a single mother. She was my hero. And I'm sure there were plenty of people that came up against Elena Linsky that were like, oh, yeah, no, thank you. But she was no different probably than your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Fierce and a firecracker.
Yeah.
And that's how we survived. And I looked up to her, even when it wasn't easy to do that. And I know that it was when I got to camp, when you guys accepted me as a counselor, that it gave me the opportunity to come back into my spirit. Waylon started that, especially through the theater roles that I got and such. But none of my friends, it wasn't until more recent days that my friends knew anything that had happened to me in my life. They didn't know how I showed up at 15 at Wayland and all the things I'd just gone through, because to them, I came off confident, which always makes me laugh, because I'm like, wow, what do I really project? Because I internally, you don't want to be inside. And it's not that it's crazy. It's just like, no, I've just got so much. So, and I imagine so does everybody else. But my point is you gave so much freedom to me to feel me, allow me to be me. And it wasn't anything you said. It was just the space and the space you provided.
I think we're seeing that more and more. And I think we saw it last summer that we are a safe place. We try to be a safe place. We, say that we're a safe place, and we try to follow through with that. And we saw more campers, I would say in particular, that really express themselves in ways that I've not seen before. And I feel that it was because they felt safe and they were not being judged. And so that's good.
Well, and I love this because I have to tell you, because then, as you know, life continues to happen. So you can have your time at camp and then you grow up and then life continues to happen. And even putting your best foot forward, shit can happen. And it's how you're going to show up and how you're going to pull yourself up and how you're going to permeate through and what impact you're going to make and what perspective are you going to take away from that circumstance, which is so interesting and so why my vision and my intention was to have you be my first guest. Because I feel like after going through COVID and losing our mother 2 weeks before the country shut down, and Andrea and I being with her to her final breath, and seeing all the things that happen with people's mental health and shutdowns and economics and all the things, faced with a lot of limited beliefs and faced with limited beliefs outside of my source of myself and then within, and having to get to the place where none of that matters. Don't worry about that. Just be you. And I think that camp represented for me exactly that to 100%. So I think right now when people are seeing me being a part of not only what I've been a part of career-wise as a hair and makeup artist in the film and television industry, but also now launching an athleisure company or launching a podcast or putting up drawings of fashion, this is who I always was since I was a little girl. This
Mhm.
is why I wanted you here with me today, because I know you get that. I know you get that and want that for every little girl that comes into that camp to
Right.
be her best version of herself. Do you want to speak on that?
I think it goes back to actually what I did say about, if in the years to come, if there's anything else that I would, strive for, would be to be remembered as being kind and to help people be the best version of themselves, and to, draw on that courage, whether it's be to step off and water skiing and still be able to do that, knowing they might take a real bad slam, or, that they're willing to start a new company or speak up and say, no, I can't do that, or yes, I will help you with that. I think that really this past year especially has had all of us examine what we really believe in, maybe not just this past year, but the last decade. What do we really believe in? What are we really striving for in our own lives? What is it that we're trying to remember?
As a woman who has been raised in a time that you were young enough, but being probably directly affected on a certain level with the women's movement and civil rights and interracial rights and rights for gays and rights for women's voices and voting rights and just women being able to be business women and have their own name on a checkbook and own property and have their careers and be multifaceted, and seeing the kinds of things that have happened more recently in our climate worldwide, let alone in our own backyard. How has that, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, no doubt things have certainly changed in the years I've been around.
Mhm.
um, and again, I think when you're younger, you're not as aware of it. But now I think back to remembering comments that might have been made, or about various things, whether it be about racial references or exclusiveness or things like that. And I realize how much we have changed. And I think I'm so grateful that the more liberal thought, I guess you might say, was instilled also into both of my sons. Christopher he fought for the underdog all the time. And Jeremy is the kindest man that I can imagine. So, and definitely bend over backwards to make life easier for people and as better as we possibly can.
Well, you are a great mother, Georgie, and those
Yeah.
boys, I know, and I'm just, I know that the heartache is not having Christopher around. And I know the impact he made in his 22 years that continues to carry forth. So, so we know and understand that. And, I know, and so my heart goes out to you that. And Jeremy, I mean, again, you're right. Sweetest, kindest, and like even to be able to see him right now being honored with a boarding school and being recognized coming up
Right.
this
Yeah.
fall with homecoming, it warms my heart. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm a distant family member.
Yeah. And I'm going down to watch him and hear him on that panel too, as a media, professional. And I'm really pleased for him that he got that kind of recognition. And I haven't been back since I was on the board of trustees, so I'm looking forward to seeing people as well.
That's going to be amazing. I just love that. Well, you'll have to
Miss
send my
you.
love.
Yeah.
Oh, I would, if I wasn't so concerned about all the mishigash with all the interactions and stuff and what I'm up against here, not up
Yeah.
against, but interactively with the industry and just
Yeah.
also just my own health of just being smart about
Right.
things.
Yeah.
I would be there in a heartbeat with bells on my toes.
Yeah.
Um, in regards to, and I know, and I think you've already mentioned this, but the difference between who you felt you were 52 years ago, starting with the camp, versus today and your purpose and your passion. where did you see yourself then in regards to like what you thought your purpose and your passion was versus now? And you know, do you feel like a lot of that has carried forward and you've mattered and that's manifested
Well, I
into
think
what you
again,
imagined?
I have seen myself, maybe it took a few years to realize that because I was busy raising babies and things like that, but and also taking care of my folks, you know, when they got older, and that seemed to be the more immediate live in the moment kind of thing. When I look back at it now, like I said before, I see myself as being a conduit of, you know, carrying a business that's a legacy. I mean, only 1% of family businesses last into the third generation. So that's, I think, a pretty amazing statistic. And so the pressure, you know, was on a little bit, you know, to keep things going as best I possibly could, despite various things, you know, happening and whatever. And some years are good, some years aren't so good. And, you know, you just have to keep pushing forward if you believe in it enough. So, yeah. And, you know, I'm at that point now where I'm ready to pass that on. And I see Jeremy, you know, he's taken over he's the CEO, he's the CEO at CEF. You know, he is doing an awesome job, and I'm so proud of him. And I'm here to support him and to advise if he wants it. And to, you know, I still enjoy, you know, doing the physical aspect of things, like getting things looking good and painting, just painting yesterday. You know, and I'm proud of where we live. It's our home as well. So we like to have our big backyard nice for people.
Your big backyard is delicious. It is one of the best places in the whole world. It really is. For as much traveling as we've all had the pleasure of doing,
right?
Your camps, your land on the lake, the setting, the balance of it all, how you have it laid out, what you provide is so breathtaking. It never, ever loses its luster. It just is absolute brilliance. It is like the epitome of God creation.
Well, I think many people have said it's very spiritual. And, you know, I certainly I realize that more and more. I'm a Reiki master, and every morning I give gratitude for everything, you know, where I am in life and, you know, where I live and, you know, the people that we can help appreciate that.
So I love that. And I know as a Reiki master, you can also send that vibe out to the world.
That's right.
And
I do on a daily basis.
I sense that. And you're doing a magnificent job doing that. And, you know, it's interesting, Georgie, because some people may think of you as being very shy and very to yourself. And I think that that's just a front.
Well, I will say, I do consider myself an introvert, but I think there's different definitions of an introvert. And that is that, you know, given the occasion, I enjoy being with people and I enjoy socializing and I enjoy being a leader, you know, if it comes to that. I'm willing to do that. But at the same time, I need my own space. And I think that if anything in my life I have a goal for right now, it's to find that balance of having my own space for my own personal time, as well as devoting that time to others or other, you know, institutions or camp or whatever.
So besides camp and having children and raising, you know, keeping this legacy going forward, what other passions do you love that people might not know about you or know about you?
Or yeah, photography, obviously. I get in a flow, you know, like a creative flow that I really appreciate. I love being in Hawaii, you know, at least a few weeks, 3 weeks out of every year. That's like the carrot that's dangling in front of me at the end of each long winter, just to recharge and rejuvenate. And yeah, and I have, you know, a spiritual mentor over there that I like to touch base with. So it's important to me. My other passion is I'm getting a puppy, and I'm really looking forward to that. Like I just lost Emerson and I lost Packer 2 years prior. And after racing sled dogs for all those years and having 21 dogs, I mean, I've never been without a dog. So the last few months have been very bizarre, I guess. And so on October 10th, Jeremy and I are going to be picking up my new puppy. Her name is Pele, goddess of volcanoes. and you know, and I've never trained just one dog, like all by itself from a puppy. Like they've always had an older dog to help train them. So I'm diligently reading stuff and looking at harnesses and looking at stuff that I've never looked at before. So
becoming the alpha dog.
I guess so, yeah. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting and hopefully a companion for the rest of my life.
I hope so. And are you going to crate trainer?
Oh yeah. Which I never done before, you know, because
I get this.
Yeah.
Oh no, I get this. I remember the dogs. I remember all the sled dogs. I remember all the, you know, through Emerson, even though I wasn't physically there. And like you know, have raised lots of dogs since either when we were little, but then at 25 forward, I've never been without. So when it's down to one versus 3 or 4, yes, it's a whole different experience. And we were not raised with creating dogs. I mean, please, people didn't train dogs or harness their dogs or do whatever. Yeah, exactly. So just had a dog. Right. It's a whole nother conversation today. So I think it's amazing. And you know, like mental health and emotional balance and security and support and just something to love on.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Plus it was somebody to talk to too.
Hello.
Yeah, right.
And I think going back to camp and going back to your life and the things that you love, you know, the environment that I wish everybody had the pleasure to experience, if not for an hour, for a day, for several days, weeks, months at your camp, which I want very much through this podcast to be able to highlight, of course. But the balance of nature and animals to a human being, don't you think is like the ultimate medicine for a good life?
Definitely. And you know, they say that you can tell how kind a person is by how they treat a pet, for sure. But back to just the nature and the place around camp, like I was looking out my kitchen window a few days ago and a doe and a yearling strolled right through my backyard and just looked around, and you know, they were at peace. They weren't afraid of anything. And it just started my day off really well. You know,
I hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. And eagles, we have eagles all over, you know, and that's very special.
And you see the bears? Are you getting bears around?
I saw one this summer, but it was, you know, not away from camp, and it was just crossed over the highway.
What about loons?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I almost consider a loon my spirit animal, actually, because whenever I paddle, you know, whenever I'm out there stand up paddling or whatever, I see them. And we did have a pair of loons, and they had 2 chicks, and I think the father took off already, but the mom is still here with the 2 chicks that are almost adults, or almost grown, at least enough to be able to fly. And then she'll actually take off and leave them, which I always thought that was kind of cruel. But then they have to figure out how to fly off and meet everybody else. So it's interesting to see the dynamics of all that.
I love that you think the loon is your spirit animal. I mean, the truth of the matter is most people never in their lifetime see a loon. It's I believe, you know, because if they're not in those kind of environments to be exposed. It's funny, we have a pond in our courtyard in our house, and when we actually were handed the keys to our house when we moved in, we were doing a ceremony, a saging ceremony, and making a wish and planting our wish and the whole 9 yards, and realized there was a turtle in our pond.
Oh.
And turtles have always been a thing, because I'm always a big believer of, you know, of course it'd be nice to win the race, and of course it'd be nice to be the first one in the race to win the race, but slow and steady is good too.
That's right. That's right.
And but I have a wood carved loon around the pond as a part of all the little accoutrements to keep the turtle from going out and having sex, and like me having to put signs all up around. but I bought this loon when I did the movie Prairie Home Companion in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I saw that, I think, in the airport, and I was like, oh, I've got to have that, because I've got to have that. That's me. that's right. Part of who I am. So right. So I love that. I think my spirit animal, not that this is going to surprise you, would be the lion.
Yeah.
I mean, that cowardly lion thing still carries forward, even with a bunch of adult females. Come on, Felicia, do it for us. So if you were to be speaking to women today with everything that you witnessed and, claiming their voice, and what would be, I know you said that your legacy you would want to be, known for kindness and wanting kindness, and being able to provide the best foot forward for everybody to find that within themselves. If you had something more to say regarding to women directly, what would it be that if you were standing up on a podium in front of thousands and thousands of women, what would you want for them to hear today that would empower them to go out into the world and do and be the best version of themselves?
I think definitely to be kind in all your interactions, whether you agree with them or not. Certainly to be strong and true to yourself, be honest with yourself, and stick to your guns. If you set a course, try to follow that course as best you can. And honesty, definitely, kindness, and compassion.
I love that. And somebody like yourself who has been who's a mother, who's a businesswoman, who has been lucky enough to have your own backyard be your business, but knowing that many women in the world don't have that luxury, and then dealing with aging parents, and being a woman, and women for the most part by nature are nurturers. How do you tell women in their life, or share with women, not tell, but share with women, knowing the evolution of those highs and lows, or not highs and lows, but the shifts that take course? How do you navigate through that and successfully come out and still keep your truth?
Okay, I think that any situation that you encounter, whether it's negative or positive, you have to think of, what did I learn from this? And what can I take away from this that's a positive thing that I can grow, that can contribute to my growth and to my own truth? And I think that if you think of that, rather than all the negative effects and all the bad things, if you can take something positive from every experience and build it in your personal resume, so to speak, your internal resume, that's really helpful.
I love that. And I also love what you said about that it wasn't about accomplishments that mattered to you so much as, again, in your legacy of kindness, being known for being kind and giving space to help people be the best versions. 20, 30 years from now, you still very well, hopefully, will still be here, because you're young and vibrant and healthy, and your genetics lead to that path. Your genetics are working for you, because your parents lived a long life. Would you see yourself? I mean, I would imagine you would still be living at camp and still contribute. And where do you see yourselves 23 years from now? If you could put out a wish list of manifestation.
I think as my parents were, I probably don't foresee myself living anyplace else by choice, other than maybe still hoping to still go to Hawaii
Yeah,
every
yeah,
once in
yeah,
a while
yeah,
in the wintertime.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, I would probably guess that I would still be at home at camp, and because that is my home, it always has been. And helping to carry on in any way that I possibly can until I possibly can't anymore, I guess. But if I can contribute in any way that I can, whether it be as an advisor or to get out a paintbrush, that would be my goal.
Yeah, no, I think that, have you ever considered, I mean, I'm sure technically you feel like you already are doing this, but what would be so cool is like a tabletop book,
Oh yeah.
like an
Actually, just
art
was
book.
talking about that the other day.
Well, of course, it's time. It's
Right.
time
Yeah.
to bring your art collection forward to the world.
Right. Yeah. No, we have bins of pictures and, stories to tell and things that, like, I was thinking to myself, so wish that I'd asked my mom or my dad about that, because they were great storytellers. But my mom has left quite a few writings, and things like that could be incorporated into certain things. Yeah, we were even talking about it for the last reunion, but there just wasn't time to do it. There was just so much else going on, just to run camp. But if I am stepping back from that now, I will have the time to be the historian as well.
Oh, I cannot wait. I have chills. Sincerely, like, it's going to be a great way for you as an artist and a creator, along with telling your family story and really being able to represent something historical, and just be able to tell that story. It will not only, I think, fill your soul, but be such a great homage to your parents and to the history of camp and all of our memories, and going forward for Jeremy's legacy and what he creates. And should he create a fourth generation, if that be his desire or, blessing. And you also said something, a third generation family business is nothing to take for granted.
No.
Having actually been third generation and having seen that go away as a child, that is something to truly be honored in this world, because there's so much like the influencer mentality, or the right on the coattails of, what those people have created, having nothing to do with your family, threads, no pun intended. But it really is something to be honored. And I want to also applaud you guys for that, because that takes a lot of integrity and a lot of commitment and a lot of showing up and a lot of, it's like being a boxer, I can imagine.
Yeah.
A lot of pivot.
Yeah. 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 So I think we all just want people to be able to enjoy what we have had the opportunity to enjoy all our lives too.
Well,
in their
you
own
have
ways.
definitely provided that. And so I'm gonna just finish this up here. Is there anything else that I haven't touched base on that you feel that you would love to share about the legacy of your camp, your family, yourself, what you would love to get out into the world that you feel as a woman, as a vessel, that we haven't touched base on?
I think we've talked about a lot of things. Not really. I think we've really covered the bases, quite honestly, and I would just encourage people to continue to be adventurous and to explore, to be true to yourselves. And, if we can provide that opportunity and a safe place to do that, please join us.
I love that. And I'm going to encourage that as well. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say one thing, but I'm going to ask you from a perspective of my creating this podcast, excuse me, Camp Fifi Uncensored, Did that surprise you? And what is your take on that whole position?
Okay, so this is a question I've been meaning to ask you, actually, is first of all, no, it doesn't surprise me that you're doing this at all. And I think it's awesome and it's great. And I wish you much success, in the future weeks of doing this and years. What's with the name?
So I don't know if you know this, right around the time that, between the time of Wayland and then probably camp, for the first time, and our parents were really funny about this, they gave us names that they did not want nicknamed. And Andrea came back from camp after Little Fawn with the nickname Andy, and I thought my parents were going to lose their minds.
Right.
So my point is I never had a nickname until like Wayland going forward, and it would bounce back and forth between Fifi and Fufu. So the Fufu was kind of coming out of like the boy college mode of when I started having this huge following of people who were randomly asked me to cut their hair, which led me to my entertainment industry. Like it was the culmination of all that stuff, even though I had all the other foundational stuff. The Fifi also came out of that same period. I have no idea. But Georgie, because of camp, I always referred to myself as, first off, because I never had the opportunity to become a mother successfully, going through 5 pregnancies and going through loss, I really unknowingly had the opportunity to be a mother between the age of 18 and 23 that I thank you for. And I thank you because you gave me cabins of young girls that I got to have more than one summer and create these deeper relationships with. And so it sowed a note for me that I didn't even know needed to be sowed, that reflectively years later. So camp has obviously always had a thing for me, and the learning to live together philosophy and how this is all applied going forward, and being in rooms with lots and lots of women who are not from the same bloodline, and how do you make that all work together, and how we as women are not necessarily taught how to work as a team. And yet camp in my heart did. And I just wish that all women, all little girls had that experience, so they really did know how to go out to the world and do that and be that.
Yeah.
So knowing that there's all the things in my life that I love, and that there's no subject that I won't talk about or chime in about. And as I started working with my spiritual guides and business guides and what have you, it kept coming up like, well, how can you put all this collectively together? And what would that look like? And what would that sound like? And little bits would show up, but the whole picture wouldn't. And then one day, as I was working with one of my guides, this statement about Camp Fifi came up. Like, I wish I could go back to camp, but I'm not trying to go backwards. But if I could have a virtual camp of sorts, and I would name it Camp Fifi, and she was like, "Oh my God, that's genius! It's got to be that." But I was like, I don't know how that's going to show up looking, what that's going to manifest into. And then every time she talked about it, I like kind of shut her down, like, let's not, like that. I don't know how this is going to happen. Cut to through again more studying business people and really like reinvesting in myself during COVID, and really working with people who are millionaires and billionaires and successful business minds of all different types. Lots of stages started coming up, and more submersion into social media that I can't really do when I'm on a set. And I know this is a long-winded answer, but there's a reason for this. And so this whole Camp Fifi thing, I even made this Camp Fifi coming soon, and just quietly kind of slipped it under the door. I've always loved talk shows since I was a little girl. I was the one laughing at the TV at 5 with Johnny Carson and Lily Tomlin, and and Joan Rivers and Mike Douglas and Phil Donahue, and I was the kid always getting the adult jokes. And I just was curious by nature, as you know. There was nobody I couldn't strike up a conversation with. So the Camp Fifi just seemed like a great kind of umbrella statement. And then when I organically came into finding these women who were doing podcasts that I really randomly spoke to, and they all said, "You've got to do a podcast." It all came together. And because there wasn't anything I couldn't talk about from soup to nuts, that's where the Camp Fifi Uncensored came together.
Okay, got it.
So then I took my art, which is the art that you got this morning, along with the music that I chose, that I wanted the feeling of how I feel this is all about, and combined it all together. And here we go. We launched.
Great. Now, how often will you be doing these?
So right now the intention is to drop one every Monday.
Okay.
And so yours will be the first one dropping next Monday, the 27th.
Okay.
And we're doing it very messy and organically. So like literally, like when I posted this morning, you know, today's the day, and dropped the trailer, my producer friends hadn't even like set up the Spotify and stuff, which was humorous because people are like, "Where can I see this? I'm not finding it." Blah, blah, blah. And I like, you know, and I'm Boxer. My friend's like, "Hey, people are already responding to this," and they're like, "We'll be right on that," you know. This is literally how we're doing it. It's kind of like, oh, the dining hall bell just rang and we got to get to the flagpole to bring down the flag and then get off and set the tip. Like, this is my life. Like, I call it, you know, being like an octopus. Like, we're just going for it. And for me, that's how I show up. And I, with full intention and fully love and leading with my heart and loving on people and creating these kind of conversations that can be documented around the campfire, as I said. So
that's great. Well, we have a date to do it around the campfire sometime real soon.
I look forward to that 100%, Georgie. Good. Thank you so much for your time. I love you to pieces. You will always be one of my heroes.
And you'll always make me smile too.
I love you so much.
Yeah, you take care.
Thank you so much. You too.